My name is Amika Coleman, and I am the founder and CEO of Strands of Faith. Strands of Faith is a faith-based hair and beauty lifestyle brand, and we focus on providing moisturizing products for dry hair textures. Our products are geared towards naturals who have dry textures and they need to replenish the moisture in their hair, so they offer a great moisture balance. And also for those naturals who want to grow their hair to long lengths, our products are great because they offer length retention. We currently have 9 products. 6 products are featured in our Holy Grail collection. That's our main collection that focuses on moisture. And then we have 3 additional products that were added later: a shampoo bar, a sealing oil, and a moisturizing styling custard. Our products are handmade in small batches, and we use quality ingredients. And our goal is to create our products to be as clean as possible, so we don't use harsh ingredients. And also, I test each product on my hair first before they're ever placed in the hands of the consumer. We pray over each of our products, and they're made with a ton of love and a lot of faith.
Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne, the talk show. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with the lovely and beautiful Judge Tiffany Grove, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today. So y'all help me welcome Judge Grove. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited that you chose to join us on today. So, on Woman to Woman with Joanne, of course, my first question, as always, is tell us where you were born and raised.
Well, I was born in Newport Beach, California, and spent most of my childhood in Southern California. I moved to Mississippi at the age of 14, but before we moved to Mississippi, I lived with my mother and my younger sister. My mother was a single mother. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mother managed a hotel, and for most of my childhood, we lived behind the front desk. We shared our kitchen was what the front desk people used to make coffee and things for the front of the hotel, and we lived right behind the front desk of the hotel. And so I had a little bit of an unusual upbringing. Yeah. And so my childhood in California that changed when I moved to Mississippi. My father was here. My grandfather had gotten sick. He was dying of cancer, and my dad moved back to help care for him. And so at 14, I found myself in Mississippi.
Good old Mississippi.
Yes.
So tell me what you thought about Mississippi as a 14-year-old.
So it was definitely culture shock. I mean, definitely culture shock. But I loved it. I've loved Mississippi since the moment I got here and have stayed. So obviously, chosen to raise my family here. Mm-hmm. So it was much warmer. People are much friendlier than they were in California. Yeah. But it's also a much smaller community. You have a much more community feel and sense. I see that raising my family here too. And it may just be because California was so big and the area that I was from was so heavily, it was a tourist industry. Yeah. And so you had a lot of people coming and going, but they don't necessarily stay, or they spend, parts of the year and then they go back, other places. And so it's definitely a stronger sense of community here.
Yes, I love Mississippi. Mississippi is home, and it's going to always be home. If I travel anywhere, I want to come back home to Mississippi.
I agree with that. I love coming back to Mississippi. It's fun.
Yes.
It's fun to go visit and go other places, but I love to come home to Mississippi.
Awesome. So tell me about your any experiences just being in Mississippi. I know we talked about it being a community, but just tell me about your experience growing up as from 14 on, high school and college and all of that. Talk to us about that.
Well, my father was a non-denominational minister in Jackson, Mississippi,
awesome.
And he pastored at a church from the time that I was 14 until about the time of his passing, and about 8 years ago. So I grew up, in Mississippi with that foundation, and certainly appreciated that aspect of my life. I graduated from Madison Central High School. Yeah. I went on to the University of Southern Mississippi. Go Eagles! And then after graduating from Southern Miss, I went to law school at Mississippi College.
Yes.
So, and that's in the law school's in downtown Jackson. And so after graduation from law school, I clerked at the Mississippi Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals for I started with Judge Leslie Southwick, and he was deployed during my term. And
wow.
I ended up getting to clerk for Judge Donna Barnes, who was a brand new judge and a female judge.
Yes.
And so my first job out of law school was getting to work for a female judge.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So because we need females on the bench. And I think last year or the year before was the year that we had so many female judges get elected. And I thought that was amazing. I did a magazine, an issue in the magazine about all those judges, and you were in that magazine.
And I was one of them.
Yes.
It was. We had a lot of females run for positions, and that's the first part of it. Is
Right.
you've got to put yourself out there and run for the position in order to get it.
Exactly.
And we did. Not only did we have females run, but we had females win, and so
Man.
there were a lot of new female judges.
Yes, and that wasn't just even in Mississippi, but that was like all over. That year, was it 2017 or 2018?
2018.
2018, it was like all over. There were female judges everywhere. And for me, I think that is really important because you have to have, how do I say it? A sense of, you got to be in touch with people, because I know that when people break the law, they have to pay the price and all of that stuff. But sometimes I think some sentences are too harsh. I don't have anybody in jail, I don't know, but I think sometimes some of the sentences are just too harsh. There's no, I don't want to say there's no human in it, but it's like, this is what the book says and that's what you get, and forget it,
And that's hard. That's one of the hardest parts about being a judge is that we don't make the rules.
Yeah.
We apply the rules.
just have to apply
We
it.
don't make the law. We apply the law. And sometimes it's not law that we would agree with or that we would support. But it's the law, and we have to apply it.
Right. And that's why we put you there.
And
you can apply.
And you hope that you have people that are going to be fair and reasonable and that are going to apply it in light of all the circumstance, and
Right.
but you want judges that are going to apply the law so that you can predict the outcome, that you can expect the results based on the law and not based on what the judge thinks or feels.
Yeah, that's fair if that happens all the time. You don't have to say, sometimes I don't feel like that happens all the time. And sometimes I don't feel like that happens all the time. But the law is the law.
Well, and nothing's perfect.
Yes.
I mean, we can always work to make our system better, to improve things.
Definitely.
But the reality is there's always going to be flaws. There's always going to be situations where its application isn't fair. Or
Right.
There's always going to be those cases,
That's
unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately, it is. I want to go back to talk about your family a little bit, and then we're going to get into this judge stuff. That's so
Yes.
awesome. So talk to us about your family. You're married and children.
I'm married. I married my college sweetheart.
Awesome.
We got married my last year in law school. Well, I guess right in the end of law school. And then I had our first child, and I love this story because it takes a certain kind of strength to do what I did.
Yeah.
And that is that I had him on a Tuesday. I had my oldest son on a Tuesday, and I walked across that graduation stage and got my law school diploma that Friday. And I was determined I was going to go walk across that stage. And so then I studied for the bar exam that summer. So I had a newborn at home and studying for the bar exam, but passed the bar. And he's 16 now.
Oh, awesome.
He's 16, but I joke, I laugh and tease him about how he's been to law school because he was, I was carrying him while going to law school classes. And then I have a 14-year-old son. So I've got two boys, and I'm in a house completely, everything is male, including the dogs, but me. No. I'm the only female in the house. And so definitely that has its challenges, yes. But I also get to be the only female. It has its advantages
yes.
too. So I've got two teenage boys and a great husband. He's been very supportive. Awesome. That's I think important for women who, especially if you're going to run for an office and you're going to put yourself out there to be elected, you put your family through that. And your family, my children as well, had to be supportive and had to be willing to be scrutinized and to go to events with me and to, stand there while I gave speeches or,
smile and be still.
Yes. Well, so I've been blessed to have a supportive husband and children that are being raised in a house where they're seeing that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, you guys, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
One in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime.
2, every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed.
3,
there are more than 3.5 million breast cancer survivors in the U.S. alone.
making breast cancer the largest group of all cancer survivors.
4,
40,000 U.S. women will die this year due to breast cancer.
But I survived.
I survived,
I survived.
I survived.
and so will you.
Early detection is key.
Get screened today.
All right, you guys, we're back with Judge Grove, and we're going to talk a little bit more with her about being a judge. So, Judge Grove, tell us, what was your motivation behind becoming a chancery judge?
Well, I had been practicing law as a lawyer in central Mississippi for over a decade. I had been mostly representing corporate clients and banks and insurance companies, and I was missing something. I was missing a sense of personal fulfillment. And I just happened to volunteer at some of the free legal clinics that they had at Hines Chancery Court. And I'd been in Hines Chancery Court litigating cases. I'd had cases there, but I'd never had the occasion to have the kind of impact that I did when I volunteered at the free legal clinic. And so you go in and you volunteer as a lawyer, and you're matched with people who can't afford lawyers, and you're matched to try to help them navigate through their legal issues. And I got paired with a couple of different individuals that day. That one of them was a dad who he had not seen his child. The child was about 2, and he had been gone through the court system and been put on child support. So he was paying for support for the child, but he had not seen the child. And I helped him through the process of what he would do in order to go get that right to visitation with the child. And I ran into him, several months later, and he just thanked me for what I had done and showed me, pulls out and shows me a picture of him with his son. And it was things like that in that legal clinic. And it was so personal to these people's lives, and what a change a little bit of work had on their life. And so it was then that I thought, I think I'd like to be a Chancery Court judge. I think that is a place where I could really help people, where I could use the skills that I've developed and that I've learned practicing law the last 10 years, that I could put that to work and actually help individuals when they're going through some of their darkest times. So I guess we need to talk about what Chancery Court is.
Yes, please.
So that I can, explain what made me want to be a Chancery Court judge.
Yes, please.
So in Mississippi, our Chancery Courts are courts of equity. You go to Chancery Court if you are suing or being sued or seeking something other than just money. So it may be a divorce. It may be child support or child custody. It may be an adoption. Now in Hines County, it could be a lot of other things, because we get some constitutional cases and some cases that government agency cases and things like that. But a lot of it, estates, when a person passes and we're transferring their assets, anything that has to do with estate matters or land matters, those go through Chancery Court. So I don't do any criminal cases. And so that's a big distinction.
Right.
Or people suing for big money. There are exceptions, but usually those are not in my court. So a lot of what I see are families and people in their darkest times, whether they've lost loved ones and there's issues with the estate, or divorce and child custody and disputes over what to do with the children, And so that's what drew me to Chancery Court. And I think that some of my background, coming from a house where, you know, my parents weren't together, and my dad exercised visitation. I mean, you know, coming from a background where I lived through a lot of that.
Yes.
And so I think that has led me to feel that I could do this job, that I could do it well, and that I could help people while I was doing it.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. And just thinking about the child support system, or not even the child support system, but what breaks my heart is when you have a parent who uses the child to hurt the other parent by saying, I'm not going to let you see them because of this, or I'm not going to let you see them, but that has nothing to do with the child. So do you see a lot of cases that's because of that particular reason, where?
Unfortunately, we see it, you know, I see it in my courtroom all the time. And it's hard because people are processing such emotions. You know, if you've got a relationship that hasn't worked out and you're having to, you know, grieve for the loss of that relationship.
Right.
But I tell people in court, I tell my parents all the time, you know, there's no such thing as too much love for a child.
Right.
And we don't need to do anything to deny our children of the opportunity to be loved, whether it's parents or whether it's their parents, their grandparents, aunts and uncles. You know, it's better to have more support and more family and more love. And so I try to help our parents get over themselves.
Yes, that's the biggest thing.
Get over themselves and think about what the best interest of the child is. And that's kind of our goal is to determine what the best interest of the child, what their best interest is. That's what we want to do, and that's what we want to challenge our parents to do.
Yes. Now you have to know that I am a huge Judge Judy fan. I love Judge Judy, and so, but I heard her. She had a case where there was this lady, and she was saying, "Well, he had my baby, and I just wanted my baby, and And Judge Judy was like, "Well, it's not your baby; it's y'all's baby together." He's the father, you're the mother, and no one parent has more jurisdiction than the other unless it's, you know, deemed necessary by a court or something like that. But
well, and we've come a long way on that, because there used to be, I mean, fathers would complain that it was so heavily weighted to the mother, you know, that it was just natural that the mother was going to get the child, or that that's just what was, that everybody assumed that was going to happen. And now the parents are put on a level playing field. You know, they start out equal. And so, and the courts, you know, we have certain factors we look at, and, you know, case law that tells us what we as judges are supposed to look at and determine what the best interest of that child is. But yes, it is not mama's baby, or it is not daddy's baby. It is mama and daddy's.
Mama and daddy. So, and I didn't think we were going to be going into talking about this, but I wanted to ask a question too about foster care. Do you do foster care?
We have some. Now, a lot of that goes through youth court.
Youth court. Okay.
And not all counties have a youth court. Hinds County has a youth court. So in a lot of counties, the Chancery Court judge does handle the youth court matters. But we have our own youth court in Hinds County. Okay. But I do deal with some of our children that are in foster care, and determining, you know, especially if a parent is wanting rights back. And I mean, I do occasionally get those cases.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Now, let me see. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. What is the best part of your job?
Well, there's lots of good parts of my job. My favorite parts are adoptions.
Oh, yay.
And, you know, a lot of those are kids that have been in the foster care system.
Yes.
And they're finding their forever homes.
Yes.
And, you know, and everybody's happy. Everybody walks away from the adoption happy. And so of course, I love taking part in those. And then I get to do weddings. I can marry people now.
I did see that on Facebook. You married somebody. It's awesome.
I've probably done 6 to 10 weddings at this time. I've married a couple who just came into my courtroom, you know, kind of made the appointment and came in my courtroom and you know, got married, and, you know, it's 5 minutes in and out. And then I've had the big wedding ceremonies, you know, with the big rehearsals and you know, and the big production. And I love them all because, again, you're getting to take part in people's joy.
Yes.
And that's just so special.
It it is. That's awesome. Okay, y'all, we're going to take another short break. We will be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
Domestic violence is so important to speak about it. It's so important to raise awareness about it. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men have been affected by this horrible thing. Domestic violence is rising in the pandemic, and so it is sad to know that the victims are in this during the pandemic. We must continuously talk about domestic violence more now. And so domestic violence for October is so important to speak about, talk about, discuss in your homes, in your schools, in your churches. It takes everyone, it takes all of us to talk about domestic violence in order for us to have a healthy community. I always say if we have a healthy community, we will have a healthy home. If we have a healthy home, we will have a healthy family. So let's all of us get involved to talk about domestic violence, and let's be all involved.
All right, you guys, we are back with the beautiful Judge Tiffany Grove. Okay, Judge Grove, can you tell us, is there a particular case that has changed you in some way, that has helped you see or understand people and why they do some of the things that they do?
Well, I don't know that there's a specific case, but there's been several cases that have made me, have given me a better understanding of people. A lot of the cases that we have, or several of the cases that I've specifically have dealt with somebody that's got a mental illness.
Oh, yeah.
And what do we do with these people?
Yes.
And our court system is struggling to find solutions for that. But those have given me the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into what's really going on in people's lives and with their families, and what's causing them to do some of the things they're doing. And then of course, in addition to mental illness, we've got addiction issues, and those will come up. Those come up in family context cases too. And they're all of those present sad situations for families. But they've made me really dig deeper into why people are doing the things they're doing. That's gotten them to court.
So I was looking up what chancery courts do, and I did see that they decide if family members if they have mental issues and they need to go into a facility. So have you had to do a case like that and commit people? That is so scary to me.
Well, it's hard. Those are hard cases. And I talked about what brings me joy, but there's lots of cases where I go in my office and I cry for the families and I pray. I pray for them and I go to sleep praying for them. And I hope that I am there for a reason and for a purpose, and that I am there to help them through these times. And sometimes the help they need comes through a commitment order that I'm going to sign. And I have to hope that I've applied the law to the facts, and that I'm doing what may be very hard, but that it's to help that person and that family in that situation. And those are hard.
It has to be. Wow.
And there's a lot of different layers. So I'm glad I get to be there for the joyful occasions like the adoptions, and those help get me through some of the tougher times like the commitments.
The commitments. So with mental health, are you seeing a lot of mental health cases? Because during this, especially during the pandemic, because so much is going on now. So many people our last show talked about domestic violence, and how people, it's really heightened because people have either lost their jobs or they're having to work from home, and work what may have been their only escape from situations like that. Have you had to deal with more cases like domestic violence or mental health in the courts?
I think I've seen an increase in the mental health on just my particular docket. I thought I would see a bigger increase with the domestic violence cases, and haven't seen a drastic increase. And that could just mean that they're not getting to us. That there's other avenues. Chancery Court's not the exclusive court for that, so they can go to other courts. But certainly, you put us at home together for large amounts of time, and you've got all these external stressors, and I mean, whether it's income and jobs, or just the fact that we were shut in what might be close quarters for longer periods of time. And with the mental health aspect of that, there were folks that just weren't getting the treatment that they needed, or weren't taking care of themselves, whether it was for fear that they shouldn't go out, or that the facilities were restricting and were limiting, who could be seen. Now, one of the good things that's come out of all of this is that a lot of our mental health care providers have gone to things like Zoom, where they will meet with the patients over or whatever portal they're using, but they're able to do that instead of having to be in person. They're doing it remotely, and I think that's a wonderful advancement for mental health. The idea that we don't have to get them to the provider to be evaluated. And I know even in our court system, we've had to make some advances in our technology so that we can accommodate hearing from the medical professionals remotely and things like that. And so 2020 has been challenging, but I'd like to think that we're rising to the challenge and that we're going to come out so much better for it.
Yes. I think 2020 has shed a light on a whole bunch of stuff a whole bunch of changes that needed to be made, and just being able to, I don't even know. 2020 has been 2020.
You don't have to say anything else. 2020. We will all know what that means.
Everybody will remember 2020.
And it is funny because I would always say, like 2020, like hindsight, like vision, and that's what I thought initially when I thought of the year, 2020 was like vision, it has a whole new meaning now.
Oh yeah. And then they say hindsight is 2020. We want 2020 to be behind us. Yeah. Go away.
I agree with that.
All right. Well, Judge Grove, tell us before we end, talk to us about, and if there's any advice first that you would give to a young lady who is interested in, becoming a Chancery Court judge or any type judge, what advice would you give them?
The only limitation you have are the ones that you put on yourself.
Absolutely.
It is hard to push ourselves out of our comfort zone sometimes. And I'll admit that when I was contemplating running for Chancery Court judge, and we have qualifying papers, you have to fill out these papers. I drove around with those things in my front seat for probably 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it was so hard to actually, turn those in. It's like, that affirmative act of, I am really doing this. I am really doing this. And so I guess my advice would just be to challenge yourself, step out of your comfort zone, and know that you are the only person limiting what you can do.
That's it. And that's absolutely it. I should have asked that question last, but tell us, as a mother, how have you been able to juggle and handle being a judge along with being a mother of 2 sons that are very active and be a wife? How have you been able to juggle it all?
Well, I'll start with talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was such an inspiration to a lot of female lawyers like me and judges like me. But before I was a judge, I was a lawyer, and I had a lot of respect for her. There's a quote she talks about, and she said, you can't have it all at once. Yeah. I'll probably get the quote wrong, but she says something like, over my lifetime, I think I've had it all, but at different times. And it was hard at different times. And that quote really resonated with me because there were times when my children were my priority and they needed me more. Yes. And I could not have run for judge when I had toddlers. Right. So there was a season in life. There's a season in life for everything. And to embrace what's important to you at that time. Yes. I don't regret the time I spent with my children when they were young. I was working full time, but I was room mom, and I would, do the things that brought me joy in raising them as they were, little ones. And now they're young men and they don't need me as much. And I've got one of them drives and can drive the other around. And it's given me time to spend on me that I didn't have before. And so I think when it comes to the whole idea of work-life balance, it's to put your priorities in order,
Yes.
and to make sure that you're giving time that reflects your priorities.
Yes.
That you're making time for the things that are important to you. I've used this year as a year to kind of try to get myself in order. When the whole pandemic started, I made a little Facebook post, and it was like, okay, it was a note to myself on Facebook, and it just said, quiet down all that nervous energy and use that to be part of the solution, not part of the problem,
Right.
to use it for something good. Well, you know what I did?
What's that?
I started walking, praying and walking and spending some time being reflective. I've lost 50 pounds.
Woo!
50 pounds this year.
Awesome.
And it wasn't what I intended to do.
Right.
It was a result of taking that time for
yourself.
Myself.
Yes.
And so I think too, that is something that we as women tend to forget. We sometimes get so caught up in trying to care for everybody else or please everybody else, whether it's, to perform at work or to take care of things at home, that we forget about our own health.
Yes.
And so I think it goes back to priorities and what your priorities are.
Right.
But if you are a priority,
Yes.
you've got to make time for you.
We have to make time for us. You just preached a whole sermon to me. Thank you. Judge Grove, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been absolutely pleasant and wonderful.
Well, I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure. All right, you guys. Thank y'all so much for joining us for another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne, the talk show. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow our YouTube channel, share this with somebody that you think it may help. Love y'all so much and see you next time. Bye-bye.
If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to sponsor an episode, please reach out to us. You can email us at joanne@womantowomanwithjoanne.com.